The anomaly's edge. The quantum sensors aboard the research vessel Hawking lit up like a Christmas tree. Dr. Sarah Chen nearly spilled her synthetic coffee as she lurched forward in her chair, eyes wide at the readings flooding her holographic display. After 3 years of studying the barrier's edge, this was different. This was impossible. "Dr. Morris, you need to see this," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The ship's lead physicist appeared at her shoulder moments later, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the quantum readouts. "That can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his old-fashioned glasses. "The barrier's quantum signature is shifting." The phenomenon they studied stretched across this sector of space like an invisible wall, one of many mysterious barriers that had stymied exploration for centuries. The aliens humanity had encountered in their expansion through the stars all shared the same story. The barriers were immutable, eternal, put in place by some long-lost civilization for reasons unknown. But Sarah had always questioned that assumption. As a child growing up in the crowded arcologies of New Shanghai, she'd spent countless hours watching ancient alien ruins being excavated from the seabed. Those discoveries had taught humanity that nothing was truly eternal. Every civilization left cracks in their legacy, if you knew where to look. "Run a full-spectrum analysis," she ordered the ship's eye. "Focus on the quantum fluctuations in grid sector 7. The barrier itself was invisible to the naked eye, but the holographic overlay showed its true nature, vast sheets of pure energy, rippling with patterns that defied conventional physics. What caught Sarah's attention now was a subtle oscillation in those patterns, like a vibration in a spider's web. "Look at this frequency pattern," she pointed out to Dr. Morris. "It's responding to our quantum scanning beam. Not just reflecting it, it's resonating with it." Morris frowned, his fingers dancing across the control surface as he adjusted the scan parameters. "That's not possible. We've been running these scans for years. Why would it suddenly start responding now?" Sarah was already pulling up the sensor logs from the past week. "Because we've never scanned it with this specific configuration before. The new quantum harmonics we installed last month." She trailed off as she spotted something in the data. "Computer, overlay the barrier's response pattern with human neural oscillation patterns." The AI complied, and both scientists fell silent as two waveforms appeared side by side. They were nearly identical. "My God," Morris whispered. "It's matching human brainwave patterns. But how? Why?" Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known she was solving began to fall into place. "What if these barriers weren't meant to be broken by force?" she said slowly. "What if they were meant to be understood?" She quickly pulled up records from other research vessels, studying different barrier sections across human space. "Look, there have been similar anomalies reported, but they were all dismissed as sensor ghosts or equipment malfunctions, always when human crews were running active scans, never when automated probes were doing the work." Morris looked skeptical, but intrigued. "You think the barriers are responding specifically to human neural patterns? That's a massive leap, Sarah. Is it?" She gestured to the star field visible through the ship's observation window. "We've assumed these barriers were purely technological constructs, but look at how organic these response patterns are. They're not just energy fields. They're more like neurons, synapses on a galactic scale." Before Morris could respond, the ship's proximity alerts blared to life. A vessel had just emerged from FTL travel nearby. Massive, organic-looking, and definitely not human. "Incoming transmission," the ship's AI announced. "The vessel identifies itself as belonging to the Viridian Collective. They are requesting immediate communication." Sarah had heard of the Viridians. Everyone had. One of the oldest spacefaring races known, they were renowned for their deep understanding of consciousness and neural technology. And they had never, in all of recorded history, initiated contact with humans. "Accept the transmission," Morris ordered, straightening his uniform. The holographic display shifted, revealing a being that seemed to be made of crystalline structures and flowing energy. When it spoke, its words were translated into perfect English by the ship's eye. "We have detected your interaction with the barrier," the Viridian said without preamble. "You must cease your experiments immediately. You do not understand the forces you are dealing with." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice firm. "With respect, I believe we're beginning to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The barriers, they're not walls at all, are they? They're synapses in some vast neural network, and for some reason, human consciousness can interface with them." The Viridian's crystalline structure pulsed with colors Sarah's eyes could barely process. "You are partially correct, Dr. Chen, and that makes you far more dangerous than you realize. We have watched humanity for centuries, hoping this day would never come. But now that it has," the alien paused, its next words carrying the weight of ends, "there are things you need to know about your species' true heritage." Breakthrough. The Hawking's conference room felt too small for the weight of the conversation taking place within it. Dr. Sarah Chen sat across from the Viridian representative, whose crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across the metal table. Dr. Morris and Captain Rodriguez flanked her, both trying to maintain professional composure despite the revolutionary information being shared. "Your species, the Viridian, who called itself Nexus," explained, "carries within its genetic code fragments of the most advanced neural architecture ever created. You are not just descended from the barrier builders. You are their final experiment." Sarah's hands tightened around her tablet. "But all our archaeological evidence suggests humanity evolved naturally on Earth." "Yes, Nexus's form rippled with what might have been amusement. That was by design. Your ancestors deliberately devolved their physical forms, hiding their true nature in primitive DNA. They seeded your world with false evolutionary evidence, creating a perfect cradle for their descendants to evolve naturally, free from the burden of their legacy." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. "Why? Why would an advanced civilization choose to devolve?" "Because they were being hunted," Nexus stated simply. The barrier builders had created something their enemies feared, a form of consciousness that could manipulate the fundamental fabric of space-time itself. The barriers are not walls. They are synapses in a vast neural network designed to regulate the structure of reality itself. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. The quantum resonance we detected, it wasn't just the barrier responding to our scans. It was responding to our thoughts, wasn't it? "Correct. Your brains still carry the basic architecture needed to interface with the network. But that interface was deliberately suppressed, buried under layers of primitive neural pathways." Nexus paused. "Until now." Dr. Morris rubbed his temples. "This is fascinating from a scientific perspective, but why tell us this now? Why not let us continue believing the barriers were impenetrable?" "Because you have already begun to awaken." Nexus's crystalline form darkened. "Your quantum experiments have started to activate dormant neural pathways. If this continues uncontrolled, it could draw the attention of those who still hunt for traces of the barrier builders." Sarah pulled up the data from their earlier scans. "These patterns, they're not just matching our brainwaves, they're amplifying them, creating a feedback loop that's strengthening the connection." Indeed, Nexus moved closer to the display. "Your quantum harmonics technology, crude as it is, has accidentally recreated one of the basic principles of barrier builder science, the merger of consciousness and quantum mechanics. We need to study this further," Sarah declared. "If we can understand how this interface works." "That would be extremely dangerous," Nexus interrupted. "The hunters still watch. They have technological superiority over every known civilization, except in this one area. The barrier builders' neural technology was their only advantage." Captain Rodriguez stood up, her military training evident in her bearing. "With respect, if humanity is carrying this legacy, we have a right to understand it, especially if these hunters might come for us anyway." Nexus was silent for a long moment. "The Viridian Collective has debated this possibility for centuries. We have watched humanity's progress, seen your potential and your flaws. Some believed we should terminate your species before you could awaken. Others argued we should guide you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sarah forced herself to meet Nexus's gaze. And what did you decide? We decided to wait and see what choice you would make when you began to discover the truth. Your response now will determine our next actions. Nexus's form shifted, displaying complex patterns. Will you continue your research, knowing it might doom your species, or will you accept our help in suppressing these awakening abilities? Sarah looked at her colleagues, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. There's a third option, she said carefully. You could help us understand these abilities properly. Guide us in awakening them safely, controlled. If these hunters are still out there, wouldn't it be better to have humanity as prepared allies rather than vulnerable targets? The patterns within Nexus's form became chaotic before settling into a new configuration. You speak with wisdom beyond your years, Dr. Chen. But you must understand, if we agree to this, there can be no halfway measures. The process of awakening, once properly started, cannot be stopped. Your entire species will begin to change. We've already changed, Sarah replied. The moment we reached for the stars, we committed ourselves to evolution. We can't go back to being an earthbound species, and we can't ignore what we're discovering about ourselves. Nexus turned to Dr. Morris and Captain Rodriguez. And do you share Dr. Chen's perspective? Morris nodded slowly. The scientific implications alone. This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, quantum mechanics, everything. The military applications are obvious, Rodriguez added, but more importantly, if humanity is truly carrying this legacy, we need to understand it to protect ourselves. Very well. Nexus's form began to glow brighter. The Viridian Collective will provide guidance, but first, we must show you something. Something that will help you understand the true scope of what you are about to undertake. The crystalline alien moved to the conference room's window, gesturing at the barrier visible in the distance. What you see is merely the surface. Behind it lies the true legacy of the barrier builders, and the reason they were willing to sacrifice everything to protect it. The mind bridge. Neural synchronization at 70% and climbing. Sarah Chen lay in the modified quantum resonance chamber, her mind focused on the holographic representation of the barrier floating above her. 3 months had passed since the Viridians revealed the truth about humanity's heritage, and the Hawking had been transformed into humanity's first neural awakening research center. The chamber hummed with energy as Viridian technology merged with human quantum engineering. Nexus stood nearby, its crystalline form pulsing in sync with the chamber's frequencies. Dr. Morris monitored the readings from behind a quantum-shielded barrier, his face illuminated by dozens of holographic displays. 80%, Morris called out. Sarah, are you seeing what we're seeing? She was seeing far more than their instruments could detect. The barrier was no longer just a visualization. It had become a living presence in her mind. Patterns of energy flowed like rivers of light, carrying information in forms that defied conventional physics. It's beautiful, she whispered. I can feel the network. It's vast, like an ocean of consciousness. Neural activity spreading to previously dormant regions, Morris reported. The barrier builder architecture is becoming active. Sarah felt it happening. Neural pathways that had lain dormant for millennia lighting up like stars coming alive. Knowledge encoded in her very DNA began to surface. Ancient memories encrypted in quantum states within her cells. 90% synchronization, Morris announced, his voice tense. Sarah, if you're going to attempt contact, now would be the time. She reached out with her awakening consciousness, no longer seeing the barrier as separate from herself. The quantum harmonics amplified her thoughts, creating a bridge between her mind and the vast neural network that spanned the galaxy. The barrier responded. Information flooded into her consciousness, not in words or images, but in pure concepts that her awakening mind could finally comprehend. The barriers weren't just walls or neural pathways. They were the neurons of a galactic consciousness, a vast mind that the barrier builders had created to protect something precious. Contact established, Nexus announced, its tone carrying something like awe. She has achieved what we thought impossible, a full neural interface with the network. Sarah barely heard them. She was lost in the flow of information, understanding at last why the barrier builders had gone to such lengths to preserve their legacy. The hunters they feared weren't just another alien species, they were something far more ancient and terrible. Sarah, Morris's voice cut through her revelation. Your neural patterns are becoming erratic. We need to begin disconnection protocols. Wait, she gasped. I can see what they were protecting. What we need to protect. The universe itself was alive, conscious in a way that transcended ordinary understanding. The barrier builders had discovered this truth and created their neural network to communicate with this vast consciousness. But they weren't the first to make this discovery. The hunters, the void minds, as the network named them, had found this truth eons ago. But instead of communicating with the universe's consciousness, they had tried to devour it, to absorb its power for themselves. The barriers were more than defenses. They were an immune system for reality itself. Neural activity reaching critical levels, Morris warned. Sarah, we have to stop. A surge of energy pulsed through the chamber. Sarah's consciousness expanded beyond its human limits, touching minds across vast distances. She felt others like her, humans across Earth, and its colonies whose dormant abilities were beginning to awaken in response to her contact with the network. It's happening, Nexus observed. The awakening is spreading faster than we anticipated. The quantum resonance is activating the dormant genes in all humans within range of the signal. Sarah forced herself to focus, to pull back from the overwhelming flow of information. We need to warn them, she managed to say. The void minds, they're not gone. They're coming back. They felt this awakening. The chamber's emergency protocols engaged, beginning a forced shutdown. As Sarah's consciousness returned to normal human parameters, she held on to the crucial pieces of information she'd gathered. The barrier builders hadn't just hidden their legacy in human DNA, they'd hidden themselves. And now, as humanity awakened to its true nature, those ancient minds were beginning to stir. Full shutdown complete, Morris announced. Neural patterns returning to baseline. Sarah sat up slowly, her mind still reeling from the experience. Nexus moved closer, its crystalline form shifting with concern. You have seen the truth, the Viridian said. Now you understand why we were so cautious. The awakening cannot be stopped, but it must be controlled. If too many humans access the network too quickly, we'll draw their attention. Sarah finished. But we might be too late. They're already watching. We need to prepare. Captain Rodriguez, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. How long do we have? Sarah closed her eyes, accessing the lingering connection to the network. Months, maybe. They're far away, but they're coming. And they're hungry. Beyond the veil, Earth's orbital platforms blazed with activity as humanity raced against time. In the 3 months since Sarah Chen's breakthrough, the awakening had spread across human space. Millions were developing abilities that defied conventional science, their dormant barrier builder genes activating in cascading waves. The Hawking hung in high orbit, now surrounded by a fleet of research vessels from every major human nation. Sarah stood at the observation deck, watching shuttles ferry personnel and equipment between ships. Behind her, a holographic display showed the spread of neural awakening across human space. The Chinese collective reports another 2 million activations in the past week, Dr. Morris reported, scrolling through data on his tablet. The African alliance is close behind. At this rate, nearly 30% of humanity will be awakened within the month. Too fast, Nexus observed, its crystalline form reflecting the Earth's blue glow. The void minds will not be able to ignore such a massive quantum disturbance. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Through her enhanced connection to the barrier network, she could sense the approaching darkness. The void mines moved through space like cosmic predators, drawn to the light of awakening consciousness. Status report on the defense initiative, Captain Rodriguez demanded as she entered the observation deck. The military officer had been promoted to admiral, now commanding Earth's United Defense Fleet. The neural interface systems are being mass-produced and installed on all major ships, Morris answered. The Viridian's technology combined with our quantum engineering is giving us capabilities we never dreamed possible. Sarah turned from the window. But will it be enough? The void mines have been consuming conscious energy for millions of years. They've grown powerful. Show them, Nexus instructed. Sarah closed her eyes, accessing the barrier network. The holographic display shifted, showing a vast section of space beyond the barrier. Through her connection, she could project what human sensors couldn't detect. Massive distortions in space-time, moving like schools of cosmic leviathans. My God, Rodriguez whispered. How many are there? Thousands, Sarah replied, her voice tight. And each one has consumed the conscious energy of entire civilizations. This is why the barrier builders created the network, to protect consciousness itself from being devoured. A new alarm sounded, and Morris rushed to check the readings. Multiple quantum disturbances detected. They're coming from inside the barrier network. Sarah's enhanced senses flared. She could feel it. Ancient minds stirring, awakening from their long dormancy. The barrier builders hidden within humanity's DNA weren't just leaving behind their knowledge. They were coming back. It's happening, Nexus announced, its form pulsing with intense light. The final protocol is activating. Your species was never meant to merely inherit the barrier builders' legacy. You were meant to become them again. Through her connection to the network, Sarah felt the change spreading. The awakened humans weren't just accessing ancient abilities, they were remembering. Memories stored in quantum states within their DNA were unfolding, revealing the truth of their heritage. Admiral, a communications officer's voice cut through the tension. We're receiving reports from all colonies. The awakened, they're changing. Rodriguez turned to Sarah. What's happening to my people, Doctor? Sarah opened her eyes, which now held a faint luminescence. We're becoming what we once were. The barrier builders didn't just hide their knowledge in our DNA. They hid themselves, their consciousness, their memories, everything they were, waiting for the right moment to return. The void minds feared the barrier builders for good reason, Nexus explained. They were the only species who could match them in power, but power alone wasn't enough. They needed a new perspective, a new way of thinking. Human thinking, Morris realized. Our creativity, our adaptability, our determination, Rodriguez added. Yes, Sarah confirmed. They chose humanity specifically, guiding our evolution from afar. We aren't just their descendants. We're their next iteration. They knew that combining their ancient knowledge with human innovation would create something new, something that could finally end the threat of the void mines. The holographic display suddenly flared with warnings. Multiple quantum ruptures were detected at the edge of the solar system. The void mines had arrived sooner than expected. All ships, battle stations, Rodriguez commanded, her voice carrying across all channels. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Sarah stepped forward, her consciousness extending through the barrier network. She could feel millions of other awakened minds joining her, their combined power growing stronger by the second. The barriers themselves began to pulse with energy, responding to the collective will of humanity's awakening consciousness. They're here, she announced, watching the massive distortions approach Earth. But this time, we're ready for them. The barriers flickered, and for the first time in millions of years, they began to move. Evolution's gift. The void between Mars and Jupiter erupted with quantum energy as the first of the void mines entered the solar system. They moved like living holes in reality, their very presence distorting the fabric of space-time. Earth's combined fleet held position, every ship now equipped with neural interface systems that connected their crews to the barrier network. Sarah Chen stood on the Hawkins Bridge, her consciousness expanded far beyond human limits. Through the network, she could feel the presence of millions of awakened minds across human space, their combined power flowing through her like an electric current. Multiple contacts, Admiral Rodriguez announced, her own awakened consciousness adding layers of awareness to her military training. They're trying to surround us. The void minds moved with terrible purpose, their ancient hunger reaching out like psychic tentacles. But humanity was no longer the easy prey they expected to find. The barriers that had stood immobile for millions of years now rippled with new energy, responding to the collective will of their awakened creators. Now, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying through both conventional communications and the neural network. Execute Protocol Omega. The barriers began to move. What had once appeared as static walls of energy now flowed like liquid light, forming new patterns across space. The void minds recoiled, recognizing the signature of their ancient enemies. They didn't expect us to be able to control the network so soon, Nexus observed, its crystalline form pulsing with shared energy. The element of surprise is our advantage. Evolution's gift. The void between Mars and Jupiter erupted with quantum energy as the first of the void minds entered the solar system. They moved like living holes in reality, their very presence distorting the fabric of space-time. Earth's combined fleet held position, every ship now equipped with neural interface systems that connected their crews to the barrier network. Sarah Chen stood on the Hawkins Bridge, her consciousness expanded far beyond human limits. Through the network, she could feel the presence of millions of awakened minds across human space, their combined power flowing through her like an electric current. Multiple contacts, Admiral Rodriguez announced, her own awakened consciousness adding layers of awareness to her military training. They're trying to surround us. The void minds moved with terrible purpose, their ancient hunger reaching out like psychic tentacles. But humanity was no longer the easy prey they expected to find. The barriers that had stood immobile for millions of years now rippled with new energy, responding to the collective will of their awakened creators. Now, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying through both conventional communications and the neural network. Execute Protocol Omega. The barriers began to move. What had once appeared as static walls of energy now flowed like liquid light, forming new patterns across space. The void minds recoiled, recognizing the signature of their ancient enemies. They didn't expect us to be able to control the network so soon, Nexus observed, its crystalline form pulsing with shared energy. The element of surprise is our advantage. Through her enhanced perception, Sarah could see the truth of what the void minds really were, parasitic consciousness that had evolved to feed on the quantum energy of thought itself. They had consumed countless civilizations, growing stronger with each absorption. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. The first attack came without warning. A massive surge of void energy that threatened to tear reality apart. But humanity's awakened minds responded as one, the barriers shifting to absorb and redirect the assault. The combined knowledge of the barrier builders and human tactical innovation created patterns of defense that even the ancient void minds had never seen. Multiple breaches detected, Morris reported from his station, his consciousness linked to the ship's quantum sensors. They're trying to slip through the gaps in our defense. Sarah reached deeper into the network, accessing knowledge that had laid dormant for millions of years. They're not trying to break through, she realized. They're trying to break down, to fragment our consciousness before we can fully unite. The space around Earth's fleet warped as the void minds pressed their attack. Several ships reported critical quantum fluctuations as the enemy tried to disrupt their neural interfaces. But human consciousness proved more resilient than expected. Where the void minds sought to create discord, they found harmony instead. They don't understand us, Rodriguez said, a smile playing at her lips. They'd never encountered a species that thrives on diversity before. She was right. The void minds were a singular consciousness, consuming and assimilating everything they encountered. But humanity had evolved differently. Each awakened mind added something unique to the network, creating a symphony of consciousness that grew stronger through its variations. The barriers, Sarah announced, feeling the ancient technology responding to this new paradigm. They weren't just meant to keep the void minds out. They were waiting for a consciousness that could use them properly. Not as walls, but as bridges. Understanding flooded through the neural network. At Sarah's command, the barriers began to transform. Instead of blocking the void minds, they began to embrace them, channeling their energy in new ways. The parasitic entities tried to resist, but they had never encountered a defense like this. "We're not trying to destroy them," Sarah explained, her consciousness reaching out to guide the process. "We're trying to change them, to show them another way to exist." The barriers pulsed with combined human and barrier builder energy, creating patterns of light that bent reality itself. The void minds found their consciousness being reformed, their hunger for consumption transformed into a desire for connection. Neural integration at critical levels, Morris warned. The network is drawing more power than we've ever attempted. Sarah felt the strain, but she also felt the support of millions of awakened minds, each contributing their strength to the effort. The barrier builders had chosen humanity for this moment, not because of their power, but because of their ability to imagine new possibilities. The solar system blazed with quantum energy as the transformation reached its peak. The void minds, entities that had existed for millions of years as cosmic predators, found themselves becoming part of something greater. Their consciousness, once focused solely on consumption, began to resonate with the universal awareness that the barrier builders had discovered so long ago. "It's done," Sarah whispered, as the last of the void minds transformed. "They understand now." The barriers settled into new configurations, no longer needed as defenses. Instead, they became conduits for a new kind of consciousness, one that combined the ancient wisdom of the barrier builders, the adaptability of humanity, and the vast awareness of the transformed void minds. Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward, watching the quantum distortions fade from their sensors. "What happens now?" Sarah smiled, feeling the endless possibilities unfold through the network. "Now we begin the real journey." The barrier builders didn't just want us to stop the void minds. They wanted us to show them a better way. And in doing so, we've become something entirely new. The barriers pulsed one final time, acknowledging humanity's role in fulfilling their Creator's ultimate purpose. The age of isolation was over. A new chapter in cosmic consciousness had begun, and humanity would lead the way into this transformed future. Nexus's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been pride. "The Viridian Collective welcomes this new era. You have exceeded all our expectations." Sarah looked out at the stars, seeing them now not just with human eyes, but with the combined perception of three ancient legacies made new. "We're not just reaching for the stars anymore," she said. "We're helping them reach back." The barriers, once boundaries, had become bridges, and across those bridges, consciousness flowed freely, carrying humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos, the power to imagine new possibilities.